So,
All right.
hi, it's really great to see you all and also to have Brad with us from Aviva. We're super excited about what you're going to share with us. And so, no further ado, over to you. Thank you for your time.
Okay, and I want to set expectations low. As I'd prepped briefly, but I'll just talk you through the journey that we've been going on for Aviva, and it's a journey that we're still going on, and we're excited by, and there's still a lot to do. Starting off, probably this time last year, Malcolm had actually invigorated us. He'd come along. We'd been like a lot of Christian networks that I hear about. We were, five of us meeting together regularly, praying and just hanging in by our fingernails, and just having one person be bold and being willing to say, hold on, where's the Christian network, what's going on, invigorated us, get posters up, get other people around and say, well, let's do something. And so while we were in the office, we ran our first alpha course, brought food in, invited anybody I could speak to and said, let's talk about faith. Got rejected by almost everybody, aside from a few people. And we held our alpha course, and we had, I think, probably 5 or 6 people from the office come along and then saw through. One person became a Christian. The other said, the quote from them that I liked was, I still don't believe in God, but actually my girlfriend's a Christian, and no, my girlfriend's parents are Christian, and actually I understand where they're coming from a bit more, and I have a lot more respect for Christians, which is fantastic. Fast forward to COVID hit, and all of a sudden everything was thrown up in the air. And one of the things that we did is, it was an opportunity. We reached out to some of the other offices around the UK, and I set up a Christian network Yammer group. So Yammer is Facebook for work, essentially. Once that was set up, different people reached out from different offices, and all of a sudden we had a few more tendrils of people from around the country who found out, hold on, there's other Christians around, and reaching out. And at the same time, and this is one of the key things that I think is a really useful thing, I joined what's called our Origins Committee, Diversity and Inclusion. We've got a voluntary diversity and inclusion committee. In Aviva, faith groups kind of get lumped under Origins, so it picks up Black and ethnic minority and faith groups. I joined that, and there's a whole lot of stuff that took place with BLM, and we worked, and we did all of us were working frantically to do some positive things there. But out of that, our group grew massively, and once our group had grown a huge amount, it gave a big platform to be able to say, also, we'd like to talk about faith. And so once we had this big platform and people listening, we decided to launch Alpha online. And so we posted out across the whole company, and found in this new space that we're in, most big companies and most people are finding they're overwhelmed with communications. And so we need to find as many channels for those communications as possible. But posted out by Origins, I think we were blessed by having this huge new network, and we had, I think, 35 people come along to that first session. And because we'd already had that foundation of quite a few Christians who were already ready to join up, we broke out into multiple groups on Teams, worked through the process. We had a colleague who, at the same time as I set up the Christian network on Yammer, he set up the atheist network, and I invited him along, and and then I invited another atheist and said, he's coming, he needs some moral support. And so both of them came along, and actually out of the back of it, it was the same message. They said, I don't believe, but actually I have a huge amount more respect for Christians, and I understand where you're coming from. And in an amazing way, out of the back of Alpha, he's now one of the biggest advocates for our Christian network and for our faith groups. So the biggest thing we've been focusing on is actually just creating more opportunity for faith discussions to be able to take place in the first place. After that first Alpha, we had quite a few people who said, actually, I want to follow on with this. And so we tried to then set up small groups for people to stay in connection. We now have 5 small groups with about 6 people in them each, and they're meeting different weeks. Yeah, 10%. I can make it through. This is the battery issue. So we then had small groups. The other big thing that I'm really excited by, and this is one of these things, and it's a continuing thing, it's trying to continue to create opportunities for conversation, because actually, once we're talking about faith, there's an opportunity for engagement, for discussion. Last year in November, there was Interfaith Week that took place. And so I've been looking continually and saying, well, what are the key points that we can hook Christianity on the back of? We have a world right now that is very multipolar, plural. We need to say, well, what's out there, and we're gonna go off the coattails. In order to do Interfaith Week, I needed to help some colleagues from other faiths set up their own faith networks. So off the back of this, I was asking anybody who looked like they might be from another faith, I'm saying, what's your faith background? We need to set up a Muslim network. What's your faith background? We want a Sikh network. I think you did something with Diwali. Can we do that? And so slowly talking to different people, I found shoehorned some people into being willing to step up for their faith. And I slowly gathered a small group of people, and we're now meeting regularly, and they see the massive value, because actually, when we're working together, we can all create opportunities for more faith. And when the Muslim network was set up, they realized, actually, I can find other Muslims and make connection, and create opportunity for conversation. So coming up to Interfaith Week, one of the things that we did that I was really excited by, and it created a massive opportunity. And we queued a lot of people up for this. We previously had on Yammer this kind of trending hashtag, my story, where people spoke about mental health, and that was massively popular and really helpful. And so during Interfaith Week, I said, well, let's do my faith story. And so I queued up a number of Christians and the other people from the other faiths, and each of us we did 3 things. We shared what I believe, why I believe it, and how it impacts my workplace. And we started sharing it on this platform. We had a lot of people start to get in touch, and we had a number of stories and a lot of engagement off the back of those stories. But what was really good is we reached out to a couple of the executives, to head of investments, our head of security, and quite a few of them said, I'm not comfortable with this, but 2 of them did. And one of them's a Christian, and he spoke really deeply and passionately about his values. And it was kind of the first time he'd had a chance to open up. And his team, they opened up about actually their faith. They had internal discussions about faith. There was huge opportunity just by allowing faith into the workplace. One of the other things that's kind of come out of the back of this, and this is, we're coming up to the point where I'm still looking for what's next. I've got become really good friends with my colleague who's Sikh, and she's really taking whatever ideas we're doing in the Christian network and trying to do it in the Sikh network. We decided actually what might be good is to model what it looks like to have a discussion about faith. And so we did a half-hour podcast of the 2 of us just talking about what it looks like to have faith in the workplace. And we recorded that and shared that around. And then the next thing that we said is, well, actually, what we could do is we could double these things. So let's kind of work these together. So World Religion Day was in January, and I said, okay, well, that's something that kind of brings faith together. Well, let's do this podcast, and actually we can do alpha on the back of it and be really explicit and overt. We're doing another alpha. This is an intro to Christianity. This might be an opportunity. So we had an online Teams discussion, people from different faiths, and we were talking about, well, actually, what's it like? It was moderated, and our alpha launched. And so this kind of brings us up to where we are now and what next steps look like. So it's exciting times, and I think some of the challenges we're now stepping into, and I think all other people might be finding the same thing. Prior to COVID, those in-between times, the water cooler times, the times when you're not directly in a meeting, those were the opportunities to actually say, what really matters to you? What's going on in your life? What do you believe? Now things are much more the time when I'm going to speak to somebody, it's booked in time. So it's finding that those openings, those times to be able to actually reach out to people. And the people who are engaged are the ones who are already engaged, the ones who look at the origins page, the ones who are interested in faith, they'll show up. But the rest of people, they're not looking. And this is the next step that God's going to reveal something to me, but just not yet. So that I think that's where we are now. We're kind of working through this alpha. We're trying to bring together our groups. So now we have, I think, 150 Christians across the various sites. And I picture this. So we've got about 150 on the email distribution list on Yammer. So where anybody can see you've become a member. So it's kind of putting yourself out there, outing yourself as a Christian. We've got about 120 people. I've set up a Teams group, so that's a closed group. So we then have a kind of slightly smaller group who've come from Yammer and joined the Teams group. And then within Teams, we found leads to be able to set up small groups. So 5 or 6 people who are going to pray at different points. And along with that, we've also got a weekly prayer session and Bible study. And again, most of the time it's only maybe 5 or 6 people, but it's a lot of different groups. And we're just trying to create more opportunities. And the big one that's helped is we've kind of merged with our Canadian colleagues. So we're seeing an international presence. I've spoken a lot. I want to leave it open for maybe some questions or things like that.
Really great. I mean, for people listening, they must be thinking, gosh, this is like a full-time job on top of your job, and you're an elder of a church and you're preaching on Sunday. How do you fit everything in? And you talked about having a family, you're actually in your son's room. How do you do all of this? Do you work 9 till 5 or?
You just avoid doing your day job and find out at the end of the year you've missed all your goals. No, I think Aviva. So Aviva is actually really good at this. There's elements that one I'm trying to enable is I want to create a vision, and I want to constantly enable other people to pick up the slack and make it really clear the things that are going on. So as long as there's an overarching vision, we created a purpose document as Christians. There's a whole lot of people who have capacity to do things. So I think of those faith stories. I wrote my faith story and I pushed other people to do that. But all the other Christians who posted, they spent, those hours saying, actually, what do I believe? I'm going to post this out here. So one, it's creating that space for God to call out to the other Christians and say, what's he calling to you to? So all the small group leaders, God's put them in place and said, actually, let's do this. But having a vision is the first thing. Then actually, what do we want? And the vision, and I think this is going to be the case with all of the groups. One, create awareness first. Christians need to find each other first. So create as much awareness as possible and find a way for those Christians to gather, because we can only do things out of strength. We have so much more strength when we're working together. I couldn't do half this stuff until we grabbed more people. And then get involved. So Aviva said, I joined on the leadership group for this diversity and inclusion thing, and Aviva said I can have 3 days a month to work on this. I don't, because ultimately it's I still have to do my day job. So it's find the time, but get involved, because actually find the places where there's that inflection point, where there's change taking place, and don't leave it to other people. Get involved.
So good.
And it's that recognizing that actually faith fits within those protected characteristics, and use that as a lever. This is God's given us this opportunity, and lots of other groups have jumped through there, and we've watched and said, oh, that's amazing, they've done that. We've got an opportunity.
Very good, very good. Lots of other groups in terms of the LGBTQI, the BAME group, the women's group, disability group. Come on, faith and belief, as you say, is a protected characteristic. Honestly, you sound like you're one of our ambassador teams. Come and work with us, Brad. Anyway, you've got enough on already. I love what you said about getting a vision first. This is what we do at Transform UK. We encourage groups to get a vision. Another quick question that I've got is, did you receive permission to advertise Alpha globally or just
So
UK
does this
wide?
so this is an interesting story, and this is one why get involved in your inclusion team first. So I saw I got involved. I'm on the group that's doing this, and I have to admit, the very first alpha that we ran, our head of diversity and inclusion came along, and I was like, okay, sweat it out. And it turns out he's an elder at his church, but nobody knew, and he wanted to you know to be in that. But prior to that, we did actually have some kickback. There was a lot of people internally who were like, you shouldn't be proselytizing at work, shouldn't be doing this. And the lesson I'd give to you is, one, I had been heavily involved and shown my character first, and I didn't have to fight my battles at that point. And so there were threads that I wasn't part of where people were cross about things. And I had this diversity and inclusion group, and I had my Hindu friend and my Sikh friend fighting for me and saying, no, actually, I know his character. I know what he wants. He wants to create this space. We're going with it. So they batted it back for me. So find other people of other faith, and they need you, and you need them.
Very good. We've recently just helped set up a Christian group in a university, and this young lady, Emma, she went straight away to the leader of the LGBTQI group and just said,
Mm,
hey, I'm looking at setting up a Christian group. How did you get to where you are? Can you
yeah,
show me what the criteria is? And so they've become friends now, and they've had
yeah.
a conversation about faith already. So even the process, you're being a witness, you're bringing kingdom values into your workplace. How
Yeah.
easy was it to get the resources? If there's people coming online, they lead a workplace group, there might just be 5 of them. Of course, first of all, talk to DNI, make sure you're established, but then, well, how do you actually go about it? Did you
So
write down a business case for it?
no, I'm very much a get forgiveness and permission type person, and I rely. So I'm horrible at this of getting a plan together, and in the end I got bored and I just said, actually, we're just going to pick a date, and I posted what I was going to do, and I thought the plans would come afterwards. And I was hoping somebody who had planning mind would pick up the slack for me, and they didn't, but we got there anyway. But so the practicalities of how Alpha worked online, I knew that people are time pressed and short, and finding people after work was going to be trickier. So it was always going to be a lunchtime, and it was always going to be an hour long maximum. And what we did is, it takes seconds. I logged into Alpha. They give you all the resources. I got the videos, and so we did a brief intro. Said, and this is a really key thing, be really explicit and upfront about exactly what this is. I didn't want any surprises to anybody. That this is an intro to Christianity. This is explaining what Christianity is. What we've got, though, is we've got opportunity to ask questions, and this is where the value is. So really upfront, talked about that, shared the video, and then in this instance, when we had quite a few, paused it, and then we broke off into smaller teams, had about a half-hour discussion, and then saved within teams, saved the chat. So through the week, people could ask other questions, and we'd kind of explore that through the week. So there was kind of an ongoing conversation. Then come the following week, we'd watch the next video. We did try one week. We said, well, let's share the video ahead of time so we have even more time, because we always ran out of time in that discussion. But time pressure and everything else, some people would watch it, some people meant to, and so we thought, actually, it's always best to actually watch it all together and have that time. The tricky bit was, and we didn't quite follow the format. We wanted to do the Holy Spirit weekend, but we didn't quite have that. And so instead, what we had was, we had the videos, and then most of us shared our experiences of the Holy Spirit and kind of talked through that and created it as more of a help you to understand. And actually, if you're interested, we can try and talk you through this. But actually, this is what our experience feels like. And so it created more of a helping somebody to understand.
Very good. Yeah, really exciting. And what has the response been on this one so far for you?
So the response has been really positive. I think there's a continual what I'm fighting against is um, not people pushing back, but I'm fighting against indifference, and so I'm trying to create engagement. So perfect example. Today, I was praying about something, and something's transformed. So I'd posted. I don't know if you're aware. Birmingham is creating an artwork called "The Million Answered Prayers." Looks incredible. And I thought, actually, I'm going to share this. A colleague shared this on the Christian thread, and then I thought I'll share this on the main one. And there's a challenge. Oh, is this for anybody's prayers? And then my colleague who led the Atheist Network, now that he's been through Alpha, he approached me directly and said, actually, I wanted to challenge how you know your answered prayers are from God, but I didn't want to be offensive. How can I do this in a way that's conversation? And so now that there's a relationship that's built, we talked about it back and forth. We shared it and then said, actually, let's create an ongoing conversation. So now people from all over are creating opportunities to talk about prayer in the workplace. So it's starting things that I was praying yesterday, and I was saying, how do I get that next opportunity? And so he said, well, can you give an example of an answer to prayer? And I'm like, well, this conversation right now. He's like, no, a different one. But
So fun. Okay.
but these are the opportunities are, I think we forget that British people are so polite that
Mhm.
the more open you are, the the more the vast majority of people are like, well, that's great for you. As long as you're actually comfortable in your own skin, people people will leave that as it is. And then some people, God's calling them and they're engaged and they want to find out more.
Amen. It's the personal piece again, isn't it? And go for the ones that Jesus puts in front of you. Well, Brad, I realise that you're down to like 10% or less, and your photo's gone. So we just want to say a massive thank you for your time. Really engaged. I've really loved hearing about what's going on in Aviva. We do bless the work that God's doing in and through you, and hope that everyone who gets the opportunity to watch and hear this video goes and does likewise. How do we overcome? By the blood of the Lamb and the testimony of our word. And Brad has given us his testimony, and so we can go and do likewise. So thanks again, and thank you for being with us.